Greetings and welcome to The Thirsty Mage, the podcast that's praying for the day when the 5-hour trial episodes finally run out of salt. I'm your host, David Lloyd, and yes, this is turning into another salty episode in the series of 5-hour trials of some of the lesser-known RPGs that tend to fall under the radar for any number of reasons. And this time we're talking about Dungeon Encounters, a Square Enix game that came out in 2021, I guess is when it first released. On paper, it certainly sounded good. It kind of shadow dropped at the time. I think it was during a direct. But now we're going to find out what we thought of it and maybe why it just kind of flew under the radar all this time. Joining me for this episode, still finishing up his mandatory anger management sessions because of the last 5-hour trial episode. It's Jordan Rudick.
I laughed when I read those in the note. That point in the notes, and I think that this format and what we're doing here kind of lends itself to games we're either not going to be happy with, we're going to hate, we're going to maybe like a little bit, and then some that we're going to love, just that we never got a chance to play. But we're definitely going to be kind of running the gamut here of all the different emotions that these games can elicit. So yes, Lost Sphere obviously got me very heated. I'm a little more measured, a little more temperate in terms of dungeon encounters. But yeah, looking forward to this one. This was one that when it shadow dropped, I was kind of instantly interested in it. Just kind of looked like it was going to kind of simplify, take some of the RPG mechanics that we love, and maybe do away with some of the extra stuff that maybe kind of gets in the way sometimes. So. Yeah, I'm curious to hear your thoughts. I can see that the keyword salty in the notes here, kind of underlined, bolded, made into a larger font, all that stuff. So let's get into it. I'm curious exactly what brought you to your feelings, and I'll share mine obviously too.
Sure. Well, why don't we start with why we were interested? Because, like I said, on paper it seemed like a no-brainer. This was, I believe it was like a September direct in 2021 where it was kind of, there was something else. I think it was like a Voice of Cards. I think it was coming out, or there was like
paired with another RPG, right? It was paired with another smaller RPG. So you had this and that.
Or
and
Diafield?
No, not yet. It might have been Voice of Cards, honestly.
Yeah. I feel like there was like another Voice of Cards coming out, either like the second or third version. I think it was like rumored that it was going to be shown at the direct, and it was, but then all of a sudden they're like, oh, and this other game, Dungeon Encounters, and it's directed by Hiroyuki Ito, which is he's been there from the beginning. He worked on pretty much every Final Fantasy from 1 through 12, with the exception, I don't think he worked on 7, but he was a debugger in the early NES games, and then he ended up taking over as kind of like the battle planner. He was doing a lot of game design in the battle mechanics, combat mechanics. His first directorial role was in Final Fantasy IX, and then he took over for, I guess the story was Matsuno. I think Matsuno got ill during the creation of or the development of Final Fantasy 12, and I think Ito ended up picking that up. And then
that sounds right.
He's kind of the father of the whole Zodiac license system. That was kind of his baby there. I guess Square liked it so much that they demoted him to making nothing but mobile games for the next 14 years.
Oh my gosh.
I guess that tells you what they thought of the Zodiac system, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, the original games obviously we've loved. Final Fantasy IX, pretty good. He started working on that. 12 is 12 when it first launched was I think was pretty rough on PS2. I know a lot of people that were Final Fantasy fans that kind of bounced off of it. With 10 being a little bit more traditional, but maybe starting to push the boundaries, and then 11 being an online game. 12, I think, maybe people were looking for more of a classic game in the style of 9, and it's very much a departure. Even though that the world is an interesting one, but the combat and gameplay are very different.
Yeah, it was. I remember, even like myself at the time, that was when the enemies first started appearing on the map for the first time. There was so many changes. They went away from the turn-based system to like the job system, where like you basically wrote algorithms to do the fights.
Yeah, the Gambit system, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so you had that, and then yeah, like you said, it was people were kind of mad because 11 was an online game, so it was kind of really departing, and yeah, even now, like it's still pretty divisive. Like I think some people
Hmm.
are fans of it. Like I enjoy it. I thought there was some, you know, uh, I'm gonna screw up the name of the pirate there,
Balthier.
Balthier.
Yeah, you love Balthier. He
I
was one of your
love
favorite
Balthier.
characters. Yeah.
Such a great character. So can't complain about that. I wasn't as annoyed with Vaughn as others. Maybe not your traditional lead role, but yeah,
There are more annoying RPG characters, of
yes.
course, that we've met. Like
Yeah.
he's not right up there.
Now the other thing I just almost fell to mid chair laughing about was that apparently Zidane was only flirtatious because of Aito, or yeah, Aito. Like I guess that was Aito's call to make him a bit of a hound dog in Final Fantasy IX, which was like my only real beef with Zidane. Really was like really like this. I'm not.
It's an odd character trait for him to have.
Yes.
Definitely felt out of place for sure,
Yeah.
especially with like the younger looking character sprites too. Like it was just odd.
Yeah. And then on top of Aito's involvement, Uematsu was the composer for this game.
Mm.
I don't think you could tell by listening to it. I don't know if he put a full effort in. Like he is, retired and or semi-retired, I guess, and
Hmm.
he's been battling illnesses. So I don't want to like you know throw mud at the poor man. But if you were doing a ranking of the all-time listing of Uematsu soundtracks, this would be scraping the bottom of the barrel, I would think.
Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater here, David. That's what I feel like we're doing a little bit. I mean, it's funny. I wouldn't have guessed that just knowing that it's a Square Enix game that Final Fantasy people have worked on it. I guess I didn't pay too much attention to the soundtrack, and I'll explain more later. But basically, this was a podcast game for me. Like I think it works quite well as that. Like
Yeah,
the mechanics of dungeon encounters, they're so like, yes, there's a strategy to it, but you don't need to be giving this game your full attention to get through it, to make progress. You can kind of just, it feels like something you would do almost in the background while you're doing something else. So whether that's watching a movie or a TV show, or listening to a podcast or something like that, this game lends itself quite well to that. And I ended up spending most of my a little over 5 hours with the game doing exactly that. Like I was just listening to, we've got football season coming up, so I like to listen to the fantasy football podcasts and stuff like that, and start getting excited about football coming back. And so I've been catching up with all my sports podcasts while I was playing this game, and it kind of, it really worked well for that purpose. I really liked that. I appreciated that aspect of it. My experience a little bit different from yours, though.
yeah. Well, I'll start with the overview, and here's the one compliment I'll
Sure.
give this game, and this is probably the last compliment, is that the description of the game on the product page, whatever, calls this a minimalistic experience, and that person was dead on with that
It's
description.
accurate. It's
Yeah,
accurate.
it's a
Yeah.
very accurate description because yeah. So the whole point of the game is there's like a little title card that basically says this, I don't know, some kind of cave or dungeon or something opens up under a village, and basically the village is, there's no heroes left or whatever, so the villagers have decided that they got to take matters into their own hands. So it's a 100 floor dungeon, and the whole thing is that the villagers have to go from floor 0 to floor 100 to defeat the evil, and I don't know, banish the evil so that their village is fine, I guess. That's basically all it is, like the point of the game. There's really no story beyond that I came across anyway. There's a little bit of here and there in the thing, but there's no real like pure story. There's no, like, the characters are all just kind of randomized, Jim, Bob, and whatever. Like there's no there's no title characters. Like you don't, you just kind of pick out of a group of people. From what I'm told, or read, or whatever, you can find different villagers in the dungeon as you go down or whatever, but it's like you got a party of 4, and you basically just trying to keep them alive as you go down. The environment is, so there's no actual dungeon. The environment is literally just squares on a brown, uh, I don't know, background. Like there's no, like you don't, there's no caves, there's no, anything. There's just a character, one character that's running on tiles, and the whole point I get of each floor is just to uh, fill in the tile. Like you
Mm-hmm.
step on a tile, and now you've been there, and there might be about. I think it started off with like 300 or 400 tiles that you had to step on the early floors, and I think by floor 10 there was like 800 or 900. I think so. I'm sure they just keep going up. The enemy encounters are numbers, so like you'll know exactly where an enemy is because there'll be a number on one of the tiles, and then that'll like denote a set battle. Like there'll be number 8 might be like a wizard and a wolf or something, and number 7 might be a bird and a skeleton, and so the numbers when they're black they're enemies, and when they're white they're locations that you can visit. So there's places to heal, there's places to resurrect downed enemy or down team members.
Mm-hmm.
There's stairs that go up or down.
You can get treasure chests. You can get sometimes you just get like
Riddles.
filling in the bestiary of the
Yeah,
enemies that you
that
meet. You
too.
can fill in
Yeah.
that too. Yeah, you get the riddles and puzzles too. Yeah, yeah.
And the whole point is just to keep going down, down, down. That's it. That's the experience. I don't
You've
know.
explained the game.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much more to that. That is it. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess the only other thing that we can explain is the battle system, because when you get into a battle, you don't really see there's no characters. It's just like little cards. So on the right is like 4 cards that represent your characters, and then on the left is however many enemies there are. Uh, there's uh, there's a physical attack and a magical attack, and there's hit points. And so each of your characters has a certain amount of shields for magic attacks. They have shields for physical attacks, and then once of those are down to 0, then like if you lose all your physical shield, then physical attacks start chipping away at your health,
Mm-hmm.
and it goes the same way for the enemies, where they'll show the meters there, and then you attack based on whatever you think. Like if you're looking at the enemy and maybe the physical shield is a little bit lower number than the magical shield, maybe you'll have everyone attack them physically, and then you'll just try to wipe them out with health. The one caveat to that is that some characters seem to be more vulnerable to physical than they have strengths and weaknesses, I guess is what I'm trying to get at. So you could look at it like there was one time where it was like they had maybe 10 physical shield and 50 magical shield, and I'm thinking, oh well, clearly I want to attack the physical, there's only
Mm-hmm.
10 as opposed to 50. But then you find out, oh well, they're actually strong against physical, so it makes more sense to attack the magical. Sometimes you get flying enemies, so that the someone with like a sword or a mace or something can't attack the flying enemy. They'll just keep missing. So you'll have to either use magic, or you'll need someone with like a bow and arrow or a
Mm-hmm.
crossbow or whatever. So just like little things like that. But uh, from the floors that I went through, that was basically as complicated as it ever got for me. I don't know if it started to get more for you, because I know you got quite deeper than I did, Jordan.
Yeah, no, and I do want to talk about this battle system because this is the majority of the game is this combat you're getting into. So yeah, you explained it pretty well. The the thing is, it takes a lot of the randomness out of it. Like there isn't a lot of random number generation in this game. Um, Aside from when you enter a floor, which tiles have enemy encounters on them, that I believe that is randomized. There are abilities you can get kind of when you're going through the dungeon out of combat that I think can move the enemies around or re-randomize them or something like that. But in combat, there's not a lot of RNG. You almost always know what what your attack is going to do in terms of damage, right? So if you choose a sword, the sword will always hit for 100. If you choose a different sword, or maybe you choose an axe, the axe will hit for a number between 1 and 1,000 or something like that. So you know that there's RNG there if you choose that weapon. So you're choosing RNG. It's more purposeful. There's magical spells that might hit everybody, hit all the enemies, but again, it might be for a number between 1 and 200. So you don't know how much you're going to do to all those enemies. And you mentioned some enemies having more physical shield points versus magical shield points. And so you have to choose, do you want to use your physical attacks against them or your magical attacks? Maybe you have ones that hit everybody. Again, if they're flying type, you need that bow and arrow. So you have to kind of outfit your party so that you can encounter a variety of situations. You have to have like long range weapons. You have to have some magic, because if you run into a group that's all physical defense and you have no magic, it's going to take you too long to whittle them down. You're going to get destroyed. Um, I feel like if you avoid or skip a lot of the battles, you'll eventually, very early on, you get an ability to run from combat. Um, if you run from too many battles, you're going to quickly find that you're overpowered. You might even go down a couple of floors, and you'll already see that the enemies have become significantly more powerful because you've avoided fighting. And so you have to get experience to level up, because leveling up allows you to equip different and better equipment. So whether that's a new sword, all the kind of armor that you wear, whether that's a hat or a shield, an accessory, a chest plate, or something like that, all of that is how you improve your defense, right? You can choose to improve your physical defense or your magical defense. Your HP will go up as you level up. In some of the later levels, when you get above 20, you can start getting a lot of HP actually, even though the gains seem quite minuscule early on. I actually like the combat. I like that in a way. It's a little bit brain dead, right? You're not making a ton of kind of small decisions. You're kind of just choosing one thing. Like, hey, okay, as soon as I start the combat encounter, I see the numbers, I see what I'm up against, I know what to use, and I'm just going to follow that strategy throughout. You don't need to necessarily keep adjusting, other than maybe choosing to use a spell. You get these kind of ability points that you can use that have charges to them, like you have an ability eventually to resurrect your teammates or to restore their HP. So if they die in combat, you could resurrect, but then they're going to come back with only a little bit of HP. So that's kind of a risk, especially if they've already lost their physical and magical shield points, right? There's a lot of little things that kind of build up over time, but yeah, the combat is pretty straightforward. You choose the strategy and you go with it. And again, that's why I say this is a game you can play while you're doing something else, because you're not, I think the default mode is wait as opposed to active time battle. So if you're just waiting to make decisions, there isn't a lot of pressure and not a ton of tension. I think you kind of know early on in a fight, unless you've equipped all of these RNG weapons and spells, you know whether you're going to be able to win the fight or not, and to choose whether to run away or not. And so I kind of like that. I kind of like having a game where I don't have to think too much about it, where the strategy is kind of laid out and you just kind of choose one. There's something appealing about that as a game to just play, not one to maybe spend, not a game I want to spend 100 hours in, but just having it there when I'm doing something else was kind of nice.
Yeah, that's where it kind of lost me, was that it's like, played a lot of RPGs in my lifetime. And I'm kind of to the point where it's like, I kind of need something different. Like, I've played this combat system like 1,000 times at this point. So to me, it's like, okay, well, like it's like you said, there's not much thought to it. Like, it's just like if you can do math in your head, then you're pretty well set. You look at the enemy and you're like, okay, well, this guy's got to do this, this guy's got to do this, and then bada bing, bada boom. Like, there's no risk. There's none of that traditional, like, oh, how close is it going to be? Like, enemies don't really miss. Like, you don't really miss, like, unless you're attacking with the wrong equipment or something. There's never a miss. Like, you're always landing hits. Like, it's going to land for what it lands in.
The only time you can have that defending is when you equip accessories that give you like a block chance. So you're right. I think by default there isn't one, but you can choose to introduce more randomness if you want. Otherwise, you can just play it pretty straight, and you kind of know if you're going to win or lose. And I can see why that wouldn't be appealing. There's not a lot of guesswork to it.
Yeah. To me, this is almost like, it's like, okay, this is for fans of Final Fantasy that don't like the story or the exploration and just want to grind.
Yeah, no, it is literally just a game about grinding. Like, there is nothing else to it. But it's also a game about completing checklists, like checking off boxes. Literally checking off boxes. Yeah. You're walking along square tiles in this map, and they change color as you walk over them. You don't need to walk over them multiple times. As soon as you walk over a tile, it's counted towards your total tile for that floor. So if you need to touch 657 tiles and you do that, that floor is complete, and it's always complete. As long as you play this game, you can go back to that floor. You might need to. If a character dies there or gets petrified, you need to go back to that floor to save them. Knowing that the floor is completed, okay, now I can move on to the next one. You get ability points, which allow you to equip passive abilities or dungeon kind of out of combat abilities that let you warp between floors, for example. Or again, like I said, I mentioned the healing abilities that you get outside of combat. You can use those in combat too. You have to equip those with this limited number of ability points. So you are incentivized to explore and touch all of the tiles, because when you do, you get a bonus. You get one not just for touching tiles. Let's say you've done 10 floors, you're at 10,000 tiles. So you get ability points for just how many tiles cumulatively throughout the dungeon, but then completing the floors as well. And the later floors give you even more, because they're harder to touch all of the tiles. There's more enemies and more difficult. It's harder to touch all of the tiles on floor 29 than it is floor 19 or something like that. So you get more ability points and you need them. So I think there's this really nice steady progression of challenge in this game. I don't think you're meant to as much go back to the previous floors and grind your way up. I think you're just meant to do everything. And so you don't skip things. You kind of like maybe do them a little more methodically. Um, you might have to go back to town, which is floor 0, to buy new equipment. Although you do run into the same stores. I think this could be a random thing, but you run into them every 5 to 10 floors as well. So you'll come across the stores that sell the things that you need. But something we haven't touched on yet, the way to expand the inventory of the floors is by fighting more battles, I believe. So if you fight certain enemies and they don't drop weapons necessarily, they might, but they also unlock them in the store. So if you fight this particular enemy 5 times, you might open up a spear that allows you to hit every enemy for 60 damage or guaranteed or something like that. So there's a lot of incentive built into the game to explore and to fight, but the exploration and the fighting themselves as activities are not super interesting, right? And I guess that's the point. This is an RPG boiled down to a particular or two or three particular essences, right? And it's eliminating all of the window dressing, all of the kind of story elements that we do come to RPGs for, right? Don't get me wrong. To market this game to an RPG fan is a little bit it's not out of place. It doesn't fully make sense. This is more of a game for, someone who loves to meticulously complete tasks, or someone who, they're very detail oriented, maybe, right? It's a particular set of RPG fans that they really like the grinding. They really like the make sure they do every side quest in this area. Make sure they, how some RPGs, as you fill out the map, you get Bravely Default did this. When you do the dungeon areas and you fill out 100% of the map, you get an item, right? Like a potion or a Phoenix Down or something. It's doing that, right, to an extent. You're getting a bonus for that very meticulous, thorough, not exploration, but just moving around the area, moving around the space. And I think some of the later abilities that you get that allow you to manipulate how you move throughout the floors, they are interesting. They are forcing you to make some tougher choices. Early on in this game, I get it. It's monotony for sure, but I think some people will find this an appealing game, especially those who like to multitask a little bit and don't require that a game has all of their attention constantly.
Yeah, I would. The other thing that I'm sure has affected the way I was looking at this game is that I'm playing it at the same time as Baldur's Gate 3, which I think is probably the most opposite game that it could possibly be playing.
Yeah.
Compared to, like, it's almost in every way, like, BG3 is like nothing but random number generation.
Yeah, exactly.
Like for
you're literally rolling dice on the screen. Right?
Yeah, exactly. There's massive exploration. Like you can't even really check. Like you can check quests off or whatever as you're going, but because certain quests eliminate other quests, or because you could kind of goof around with stuff, like I wouldn't really say checking off quests is really a thing in BG3. It's just more of a, have an experience and here's some options, but like there's no way you're going to do them. It's not even designed that you can do them all. Like you basically have to keep going. It's and then you're with the same characters the whole time, and
That's right.
yeah, it's totally different. Now I'm curious. I know that it was sort of described to that you get your initial list of villagers that you can choose from, and then you choose them. I know I had chose like also it looked like a dude, it looked like a gal. Uh, there was like a cat looking thing,
Yes,
and
yes.
then a wizard.
Yeah.
um, their names are like don't matter really. They all had
Nothing about those matters.
nothing about it
Their
matters.
gender, their race,
No,
their
nothing.
appearance, nothing matters.
The
It
only
doesn't.
thing is that when I first took the cat, it couldn't do it. It didn't have a magical
Yeah,
attack.
yeah.
It was
So
only physical.
yeah, so their equipment matters. Their level, I guess, like if
Yeah.
they're starting at level 1 or level 2, those matter. That's pretty much it, I think. And maybe whatever their HP is,
Did you
which
ever go
could be
back and
particularly high.
switch? Like I was looking at it and I'm thinking like, well, if I switch someone out, then I'm just switching like my level 10 guy for level 2 person. Like, why would I do that?
Yeah, so I'll tell you some stories. So I've got a few anecdotes related to the characters specifically and the party members and switching and stuff like that. So I don't know the first time it happened. Probably in maybe the teens or the early 20s where I first lost all my party members. I got into an encounter. I couldn't run. I tried my best to run away from the fight, but I didn't got wiped. So all 4 of my party members are dead. And let's say it's floor 22. I know the dead bodies are on floor 22. And so I think basically what you have to do, I may be getting the details wrong because it was a little while ago that I did this, but you start out with a new party of 4 from floor 0. And I have to make my way back to where my party members died, and I need to kind of switch out my new party members for the old corpses and then bring them back to life that way. So let's say instead of getting a new party of 4, I'll take 3, or I'll take 4 and then I'll just dismiss them or something like that, or maybe I'll switch them or whatever. But you have to basically get back to where you died, and then you switch the new party members at level 1 or 2 with the old ones at level 15 or 20 or whatever.
Oh, and then resurrect them.
And then you go resurrect them, and then you can have that party again,
Oh,
right? So
okay.
you do something like that. The same thing happens when there's a couple other things that can happen in the dungeon related to that. So you can get petrified, like if you attack like a not like a harpy type creature, or those lizards, basilisks, I guess you'd call them, something like that, where they stare at you and then they turn you to
Yeah.
stone. You have to find this. It's number 8, I believe. So if you find tile 8, 0, 0, 8, and it's white color, then that particular resource can be used to unpetrify or bring those characters back to real life. You have to remember what tile it happened on, though, because you go to the Gorgon. I think it's a Gorgon statue, 0, 0, 8, and you tell it, here's the tile where this happened, and then it knows to unpetrify that character, and then you can go pick them up, I think.
Yeah.
So you have to do that. You can also, I think I fought like a dragon and it swallowed me, so you have to go and find that dragon again on the same floor, get into that same encounter, and then beat the dragon, and then the character it swallowed comes out that way. So you have to get them back that way. In one of my last runs, where it's kind of like, okay, this is probably the final one I do before I check out, before we do the podcast. This is about 4 or 5 days ago, I think. I was fighting a battle. It was pretty tough. I lost a guy, and I was like, I'm just gonna keep going. Sorry, this is where the guy got swallowed. I'm like, I don't want to like deal with going to find him and like chopping down this dragon or whatever enemy swallowed him. So I go and I find these wandering heroes. And so wandering heroes, you see them listed in the pub when you're recruiting. They're on particular floors on particular tiles. So you can get an ability that helps you seek them out. It'll tell you like how close are you to a wandering hero. When you get to the tile where a wandering hero is, you can just recruit them to your party if you have space. So I did that. I replaced my fourth, or I filled my 4th slot. I just had like a regular fighter knight looking guy. I replaced it with a dog with a sword in its mouth. And this dog was awesome. Like, he was a higher level than my other characters. I don't know if he came with some good equipment or I just gave him some good equipment because he had more carrying capacity for it. But I took this dog and it went all the way to like floor 31 from like, 23, 22, 23, something like that. So that worked out pretty well for me. The fact that there's again, these little things that kind of like if you know to look for them or you learn about them a little bit more, there's little wrinkles in the game that I think are kind of compelling. Like it's a funny little story thing that I could do. There's no story to it in the game, but to me, having a character get swallowed, I don't want to chase him and find him. I'm just abandoning that dude, and then I go and find a dog to fight on my team. I thought that was funny, and I just enjoyed that. It kind of gave me some momentum to push a little bit further into the game. Um, we haven't talked about this yet, but the floors after every 10 floors do change in terms of the tile layout slightly and also the color scheme. So you know that you're kind of in a different biome, I guess. Like it's very subtle. It's not like a market change. The game visually isn't doing that much. But the set of 10 that I got to just now, the 30s, I guess, it's like a volcano type setting. So you see like the red background. And then what's interesting about this one, David, the tiles you were probably going on, there was a lot of like um, options for you. You know, a lot of like intersections where you can like
Yeah.
choose to go left or right or straight. The set that I'm on right now, you can only go forward, and so you every encounter you see, you got to fight it unless you use an ability to like skip you ahead a couple of tiles, which you do pick up eventually. So this is like in the 30s. I think you're really getting tested. You know, how much have you been skipping? How much have you been paying attention to what the game's asking you to do? This is basically like the boss mode or the boss rush, I suppose, that the game is
The
in the
gauntlet.
30s here. It's the gauntlet. It's the test of can you hack it or do you need to go back and grind? Like I feel like this is the first big one for me. So at some point I will go back to this. Like I've enjoyed my time with it. I don't find it a game where I want to play for hours and hours and hours and never put it down. But there are times where I'm going to be wanted to do something with my hands if I'm just listening to something or watching like highlights or something like that. Or maybe I've got Red Zone on, which is showing me all the touchdowns from Sunday. But while doing that, I also want to be doing something with my hands and I put my phone down or it's charging or something. I'm going to pick this game up again and just see how far I can get. And every time I feel like there's an easy way to kind of chart your progress. You know, if you've done a floor, how many tiles have you been to a floor? How many tiles have you touched? You know, maybe go back to maybe I'm going to go back to old floors and touch all the tiles to get more of those ability points. So that'll help me in this gauntlet that I found myself in. So I respect this game. I really do. And I kind of like it as well. I don't love it, but I do like it.
Have you ever played Darkest Dungeon?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic game. I love it.
Yeah.
It's ultimately too hard. Like it's like Returnal to me. Like
Yeah.
I respect it. I love it. I think it's very cool. It's too hard, and I like my Dark Souls and Bloodborns and my Elden Ring. So I'm not like averse to difficulty, but there's a certain type of difficulty I like more than others.
I just feel like Dungeon Encounters is like the higher ups at Square Enix went to Ido and said, "Here's $50. Can you make us a Darkest Dungeon game?"
Yeah, and I don't think they gave him 50. I think it was more like 40. But yes, yeah, I take your point. Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're right
I
about
see
that.
so many similarities there. Like it's like you hire a party at the town, you're going into the dungeon, and the whole point is to get lower and lower to defeat like the enemy at the end. But then there's all these enemies along the way, and then you could lose party members along the way. But obviously, Darkest Dungeon is like vastly more detail oriented. Like there's
For sure.
the battle system's completely different. There's like different the fierce things that you have to track, and then there's a story.
There's a
Like,
story. There's all
a
these
story.
side stories, all the
Yeah.
stuff that's happening in the town. You kind of building up the town and everything. Yeah, I mean,
There's an actual pub in the town as
yes,
opposed to
that's right.
just like a square on a grid.
Just
So
calling
that
calling
says
something
it's
a
the
pub.
pub.
This is like your 4 or 5 year old like drawing a map, or drawing a pub. Like, oh, I made a pub. Like you just put a
Yep.
square on the ground, or just you literally used like a cardboard box. I remember when I was younger, my grandparents had, and I would hang out with them often. They had just gotten like a new refrigerator or something, like a big appliance, and and then
Oh,
sometimes
the cardboard.
you keep the big box, and so I'm like cutting it
Yeah.
open. I'm making an inn. It says the word "in" on it, so you know it's an inn. That's the only. That's it. But it's a cardboard box. Otherwise, there's a
Yeah.
lot of that energy in Dungeon Encounters. Um, I'll give you one more comparison to kind of because you gave us Darkest Dungeon. I'll give you one that I think could be particularly apt, and maybe one of the reasons why I'm jiving with the game right now. Vampire Survivors just came to Switch, right? Just came to it came to Switch a few weeks ago. I think it was on the end of August kind of timing. End of August, we're already end of August. In the end of July, I don't know.
Yeah.
Time has no meaning anymore.
Yeah.
At any rate, not Dungeon Encounters, uh,
Vampire Survivors.
Vampire Survivors. Thank you. Gosh, all these Ivers and encounters. Vampire Survivors is kind of brain dead, right? It's just about, Matt Zawodniak from NWR referred to it as a game where just numbers go up, and all you think of is the numbers going up. That's kind of happening in Dungeon Encounters as well. The number of tiles you touch, the numbers are going up. Your experience points and gaining levels, your levels are going up. Your number of the floors you're clearing as you go down, deeper into the dungeon, the number of the floor that you're on, that number is going up as well. The enemy's getting stronger, numbers going up. That's happening here to an extent. And so I think if you like a game like Vampire Survivors, there's something about that type of dopamine hit that's happening in Dungeon Encounters as well. And I kind of came to both of the games around the same time. Like I was playing Vampire Survivors a little bit on the plane. When I was on the plane last week, I've been playing it kind of here and there, 30 minutes, an hour at a time. One night before bed, I played like 2 or 3 hours. And I had a session with Dungeon Encounters like that as well, where I'm just sitting on my recliner in my office. And I played for like 2 hours in a row, and I didn't want to stop. I listened to like 2 podcasts in that time, and it was great. And there's something similar in the way those games operate, the way that they deliver kind of meaningful engagement to players that I like. I think there's a relationship between those two games in their simplicity, in the fact that you're not trying to win you over with flashy presentation. You're making kind of a lot of minor choices as opposed to major ones. And they're kind of incentivizing you to kind of keep coming back and do a little bit more and do a little bit more. I think there's something to be said for the kind of combination of those two games, or just looking at them side by side and realizing that they're trying something similar.
Yeah. No, I don't disagree with you. And like you said, I know I spent the last few days like probably piling on people who like the game too. Like I was looking at the reviews on Wikipedia, and I was laughing because like they were giving them 8s, but then they're like, yeah, this game is great. Most people won't like it, and I'm just thinking like, okay, like it's like you give a big mark, and then you're like, oh no, most people are going to think this is trash though, and didn't really know how to take that. And but yeah, it's like I totally agree with everything said. It's if this is something you want, you really need to have that dopamine hit of my number went up. My number went up.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
Yeah,
this is going to appeal to a big group of people.
Yeah, because there's really nothing else.
No.
Like, and that was my thing is just like I just was sitting there with my Steam Deck in my hand and like, why I can't even give you one reason why I'm playing this other than I have to because we're going to talk about it on.
I think this is a perfect game for this podcast format, right?
Yes,
because right away within that 5-hour period whether you're going to like this or not. This could be a 1-hour game. Play this for an hour,
oh,
and
easily,
you'll probably
yeah.
figure it out, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's what's nice about kind of dipping into these games and seeing like this is one where right away whether you're going to be into it or not. And so yeah, unfortunately sometimes we have to buy games to have that experience. But if you kind of take away some of what we've said today, some of the comparisons, I'd say even listening to a podcast like this where we talk about a game like Dungeon Encounters for 40-45 minutes, that's enough. You probably know just from hearing our thoughts on it whether you would be into a game like this, right? We're not, there's nothing else. We've said everything that's in the game. So yeah. don't go into it and be like, oh, yeah, where is this thing?
Yeah, I thought there was more to this.
Why didn't David and Jordan mention it? Because it's not there. Yeah. It just doesn't exist. And yeah, sure, maybe on floor 80, something ridiculous happens. And maybe I'll get there one day. But I already know kind of like how I feel about the game before that. You don't need to. I think the pursuit of clearing all 99 floors is more like a journey rather than a destination kind of thing. I don't care if I ever get there. And I think some of the numbers involved in that accomplishment are just beyond my comprehension. Like I'm not going to deal with that amount of gold, that amount of like strategizing. And I'm trying to make this more of a chill game for me. So I'm not going to, put that much focus or attention into it. But yeah, I do. I totally understand why you don't like this, David, and I totally understand why some critics do, and other people will hate it. Like it's not. Can we call it divisive? I don't know if it's divisive. I think it's just like it's meant for a certain group of people. Like it's geared towards a particular set of gamers, and so it's hard to it's hard to evaluate a game like that, right?
Yeah.
I think
It
as long
is
as you,
what it is.
it is what it is. You just got to
Yeah.
be transparent, right? Like a lot of people will hate this. Yes. Some people will love this. Yes. Like both of those things can be true.
Yeah.
And so you just have to kind of make sure that you explain that. The score of how you would rate this game doesn't matter as much as how you would describe your experience with it, I think, you know? And so when we've tried to do that,
Yeah.
I think that that's all we can do for something like this.
That's why we're playing these games, because like how could you, in some cases, how would you know? We're playing these games so that you potentially don't have to.
That's right.
Or I'm certain at some point we're gonna find a hidden gem that we all agree on is amazing, and I'm sure at some point we'll hit that. The other good thing about this is our third episode now on this.
Yeah,
I believe we paid $10 or less for every one of these 3 games so far.
it's true. Yeah, they've been very, or they're on subscription services or something like
Yeah.
that. Like the next one we're going to do, Paige and I, Sakuna of Rice and Ruin. It's on PS Plus, like one of the tiers. So I've been playing it there for a couple hours. So we're going to keep trying to find games that are not going to break the bank if you do want to try them. You know, so
Yeah.
if what we're talking about here sounds interesting, and it costs you $10 or $15 or something like that, even if your experience differs from mine or yours, like that's fine. Like you haven't committed too much to it, or if it's on a subscription service, all the better. You can dip out after a couple hours or something like that. So I think if we stick to that kind of practice of looking for like these more budget games that we haven't played before, that we've been meaning to get to, but we're not sure if we want to commit to it, I think it's going to work for everybody.
And a quick PSA for anyone who's listening to this before September 6th. If you haven't already renewed or added a year to your PS Plus, either, it doesn't even matter which tier you're in. If you're a PS Plus subscriber, run to your PS app now and add a year or more to your subscription, because the prices are skyrocketing on September the 6th.
Oh my gosh, it's so bad.
I ran to that PS. I actually think the essential, no, the middle one, extra is the one I have, because it's, I don't know if it's on sale, but I paid like $100 for it, and I added a year onto, so I still had like 5 or 6 months left, so I added a year on top of that, so now I'm good for till 2025 at the existing price. So if that's something you want to be part of, it's funny, like I'm not, like it seems like what Sony did was they just increased the price to match Game Pass.
Well, Game Pass just went up a couple months ago, right? Like it's
yeah,
it's kind of in step with that.
So, and to me, it may not be marketed the same as Game Pass, but to me, it's exactly the same. Like it's probably like equal in the sense of the games that are on there. I guess the one caveat to that is that like you're getting like the AAA Microsoft games day one, as opposed to you're not getting those necessarily from Sony, but everything else, that's it. Like there's just as many other games, like the indie games, like Sea of Stars is on both PS Plus and Game Pass. Like
which is awesome.
Yeah. So
I just downloaded Lost Judgment. I found that on there.
Oh yeah,
there's a lot of good games on the PlayStation service and they do a horrible job of marketing it. They really bad.
It's awful.
This is all anyone is going to talk about for the next month or two is this price increase, as opposed to like all these really good games that are there.
Half a Square's collection is on there now.
Yeah. I think all the Yakuza games are there
Dungeon
too.
Encounters might have been on there. Like, yeah, all the Kingdom Hearts are on there as part of.
There's a lot of Square stuff. There's a lot of Ubisoft stuff. If you like their games, Assassin's Creed, Far Cry. They're every time I look through it, I'm always surprised by a couple of games. I'm like, wow, this is on there. Okay, add it to the library. So I probably will be re-upping. I've been thinking about this a little bit more. I definitely don't want to pay the higher price. And now that we're doing this kind of 5-hour series, like all the more reason to have these be part of these subscription services for when they add more games to them that we might want to get into, right? So, I mean, I was grandfathered in on previous PS Plus subscription that I had for a few years. So I think mine runs out. My premium runs out, I think, in November of this year. I'm definitely going to add another year and then kind of see how things go for next year, maybe. But yeah, I mean, $40 more for the premium plan.
It's wild.
Definitely, if you like that service, or you maybe give it a thorough look. If you haven't already, there's a lot of cool stuff on there. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think that's a good PSA. I'm glad you brought that up. I was just reading about that today.
Well, why don't we wrap it up with a quick? You don't have to think about it too hard, but there's 3 games that we've played. It's Dragon's Dogma,
Yeah.
Lost Sphere, Dungeon Encounters. What's your ranking?
That's tough. Oh, you.
You want? I can
I know
go
what number
first.
3 is. I know what you go first. I'll tell you.
I'll go first because I it's easy for me. Dragon's Dogma is number 1.
Yeah.
Lost Sphere number 2. Dungeon Encounters number 3. That's how much I hate this game.
That's fair. I'm going to go Dungeon Encounters, Dragon's Dogma, Lost Sphere. And the reason I say Dragon's Dogma, I think, is more interesting for sure. I enjoyed my time with Dungeon Encounters more, and I plan to play more of it. So by the system that we've implemented here, are you continuing the 5 hours of those 3 games? I'm going to continue with Dungeon Encounters, at least more likely than I will the other 2. So by that logic, it's number 1 for me.
Is that the first? That might be the first. I'm going to play this again.
Yeah. So out of 6, effectively out of 6 games or 6 opinions, that's the first. Yeah, it's the first yes. And again, as I said at the outset of the episode, that's fine. That's what this is for.
Most
of the time we're going to be saying no.
Pager's in the Lost Sphere one, right? So that's at 8.
Oh, that's right. Yes, good point.
8 opinions, and we're 1 for 8 so far. So, although I'm from what I heard, I'm thinking for Sakuna, that might be 2 more, but we'll have to see, I guess.
I'm interested in this game. It is definitely one that. Well, we're going to talk more about it next month, I think. But yeah, it's an interesting one, David. I think you should check it out. You might want to join us for that one. It's got some cool things going on with the farming aspect. The farming aspect is basically tied to your progression. So like how well you farm your rice increases your stats, basically, like your offense, your defense, your HP, stuff like that. So which I've never seen before. So I think in terms of it doing something innovative, I think it scores highly there for sure.
I'm really hoping if it's in Game Pass or PS Plus, I'm there. It would only be fitting if it was added to PS Plus. Like,
it's PS Plus. It is. That's where I'm playing on PS5. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm in then.
I think it might be the extra tier. It could be premium. I'm not sure, but that's where I'm playing it because it was free. I was like, oh, score. Yeah. So you gotta get out on that. And again, another PSA to everyone else out there. We're playing Sakuna next month. If you are on the PS Plus tier that has it, feel free to hop in with us there. That'd be a good one for us all to try together.
Okay, well, why don't you do the outro, and while you're doing that, I'll see if it's in my my PS Plus plan.
Yeah, there you go. And what I love is you can just download from the app. I think their app is really good, right? The PS app,
it's amazing.
And I don't know if you've noticed, you're collecting these gold points now. You can redeem them for credit.
Yeah.
Like I have enough credit to do like $5, or I'm saving up towards like a new game or something like that. So.
It's free.
There you go. Fantastic.
Adding to my PS5 it's downloading now.
Nailed it. So thanks everybody for joining us for another 5-hour trial. This one on Dungeon Encounters. David and I split here. He's not going to continue with the 5 hours. I am probably going to. I did enjoy my time with it. It is a game that not everyone's going to like, and that's okay. That's the whole point of this series, is to kind of uncover, little known games we miss, games that flew under the radar for whatever reason, bring them into the light and see if they're ones that we want to continue with. There are so many big name games out there, so many AAA or games that are reviewing really well that we want to get into. But it's fun to kind of look back and check out games that are maybe going to be on discount or on one of the subscription services when we can. So Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, that's going to be our next one. We're going to have a Sea of Stars episode coming up really soon as well. I need to talk to Casey to see if he's playing Armored Core, because I'm tempted to play Armored Core. I know David is going to be trying out Starfield as well.
Yep.
Lots of buzz about Starfield in September, so we might just have to do an episode where we talk about a few different games and kind of split them up that way. But stay tuned for more goodness on the Thirsty Mage. If you have episode suggestions, especially 5-hour trials for us to get into, please send your requests, your suggestions to david@thethirstymage.com. You can find us on your podcast apps of choice. Please leave us a review there, and we will talk to you all again soon. Bye for now.
Bye.